The message landed just as I exited a boardroom in Berlin. I'd just wrapped up the final stages of a multi-million-euro deal with a fintech company, a partnership that would elevate us into a dominant position within the European financial sector. As the glass door slid open into the marble-floored lobby of the Friedrichstrasse building, my phone vibrated. Subject: the house is sold. I stopped cold. My name is Rowena Clark. I'm 35. For more than a decade, I've run a discreet yet formidable corporate restructuring firm headquartered in Zurich. I've counseled government bodies, salvaged failing enterprises, and restored billions in losses for clients. Yet, none of that carried any weight at that moment. Because the house, they sold it. And it was supposed to be mine. We received a really good offer, my mother's email began. Far more than the little down payment you put in, so we accepted. Everything signed. Finalized. I stood rooted to the polished floor, rereading those lines over and over. For 5 full years, I had made every single mortgage payment. I'd paid for the renovations, the insurance, the upkeep. But the title? That had stayed in my parents' names at their insistence. Just until you're more stable, sweetheart, they'd said. And now, halfway across the world while closing the largest transaction of my career, I found out they had sold my home behind my back. I stepped into a side hallway, quieter and removed from the bustle, and hit dial. 2 rings. Then came her cheerful voice. Oh, Rowena. Did you get our email? Isn't that exciting? I swallowed hard, steadying my voice. Mom, that was my house. She gave a dramatic sigh. Oh, don't overreact. Your father and I needed the cash flow. Barton and Company is struggling, and you're always gallivanting around Europe with that little advisory thing of yours. Little advisory thing? If she only saw the size of the portfolio sitting in my briefcase. If she had shaken hands with the German minister like I had that morning, who had requested my expertise in overhauling their national pension fund. And when I come back, I asked, already knowing the answer, where exactly am I supposed to live? You can stay with us. Your old bedroom is exactly the way it was. It'll be like you're 17 again. As though that were comforting. 17 was the year the comparisons to Jasper, their beloved son and current COO of Barton and Company, intensified. I had been advised to focus on marrying well, to stop chasing ambitious dreams, and to leave the business side to Jasper. And despite all that, I built my future without their help. Still, they took from me anyway. I have to go, I said, cutting the conversation short. I returned to the conference room, where a folder filled with signed agreements waited for me. In exactly 2 weeks, Barton and Company would undergo a full audit, initiated by a new consulting group brought in by their latest board member. That board member had just bought out their largest competitor. My firm. They had sold my house. And soon, they'd discover exactly who they sold it to. When they shuffled into their boardroom for next quarter's meeting, adjusting their ties and feigning composure, they would sit across from their new superior. Revenge, after all, doesn't always involve shouting or lawsuits. Sometimes it's as subtle as a merger and a quiet place at the head of the table. While my parents were liquidating assets to keep their faltering logistics company above water, I was in Berlin overseeing the most strategic corporate acquisition of my life. Barton and Company, the firm they had built with sweat and sentiment, wasn't just in distress. It was in freefall. And I understood exactly why. For the past 18 months, I had been systematically acquiring their debt through a veil of shell companies and anonymous holding firms. Inch by inch. Missed payments to vendors. Delinquent loans. Overdue invoices. One by one, they all ended up in my hands. They believed I ran a modest consulting outfit in Zurich. In truth, I was Rowena Clark, Chief Executive Officer of Veritas Capital, one of the most aggressive acquisition firms in Europe, specializing in distressed buyouts. We didn't simply fix businesses. We restructured them, disassembled what no longer worked, and folded the rest into something leaner, stronger, and far more lucrative. Another buzz. A text. From Jasper. Mom told you about the house. Sorry, sis. Business is business. Business is business. That phrase had been their shield for everything. When they refused to help with my university loans because Jasper needed startup capital. When they emptied my childhood savings account to cover payroll shortfalls, never even mentioning it. And now when they sold the house I had invested in because, as always, the company came first. I typed a short reply. Understood. Then I turned to Nico Bauer, my legal partner in Berlin. Are the contracts ready for execution? I asked in fluent German, something I had learned years ago while managing a corporate turnaround in Frankfurt. Another part of my life my family had never bothered to understand. He gave a nod. All finalized, Frau Clark. By Friday, you'll officially control 78% of Barton and Company. With a steady hand, I signed the final documents. My demeanor calm, composed, the same quiet control my family had often mistaken for weakness. But this wasn't just a deal. This was the reckoning. Within weeks, I would hold controlling interest in the very company they had sacrificed everything for. My trust. My independence. My home. I turned to my assistant. "Book a flight to London," I said. It's time I paid my parents a visit. The weeks that followed disappeared in a blur of boardroom briefings, internal investigations, and meticulous asset evaluations. I relocated to a penthouse suite overlooking the Thames, silencing every call from my mother and deleting every frantic email Jasper sent. Let them assume I was wallowing over a house. Let them believe I was still the overlooked daughter, hiding in Europe with her so-called tiny firm. They had no idea the storm that was already bearing down on them. On the morning when everything fell into place, I stood before the mirror in my suite. My navy blazer was impeccably pressed, my hair pinned with careful restraint. The reflection that met my gaze wasn't the woman they had dismissed for years, it was someone reborn, sharpened by betrayal, armed with resolve. I reached for my briefcase, which held the final documents that would solidify my ownership, and stepped out. Barton and Company's London headquarters towered ahead, the same building where my father once looked me in the eye and said, "You'll never grasp what real business means, Rowena." I walked through the revolving doors. A security guard offered a courteous nod. "Welcome back, Miss Clark. Funny how times change. If you've been quietly hoping Rowena would rise above it all, now's the moment to subscribe, because what's coming next isn't just revenge. It's revelation." That same security guard? He was already on Veritas Capital's payroll, just like several of Barton and Company's key executives. They still believed the company belonged to them. The elevator climbed floor by floor, stretching the seconds into minutes. With each passing level, my mind retraced the memories, years of being belittled, dismissed, laughed at. The countless times my business insights were waved off. The silence after they sold the house I had built. All of it led here. When the elevator doors parted, I stepped into the hallway lined with portraits of Barton and Company's founders, each smug face immortalized in a gilded frame. Laughter drifted from the boardroom, my mother's airy and fake, laced with nerves. Inside, I knew they were gathered, my parents, Jasper, desperately trying to decipher the anonymous firm now dominating their shareholder reports. I adjusted my cuffs, squared my shoulders, and walked forward. Just outside the boardroom, I paused. My father's voice spilled into the hall, tinged with frustration. "There's no way this is legitimate," he snapped. "Some mystery firm can't just swoop in and purchase Barton and Company. We built this from the ground up." "I've gone over the figures 3 times, Jasper replied. "Veritas Capital owns 78% of our stock. They've absorbed almost all of our outstanding debt. We're required by law to meet their CEO today." My mother's voice followed, dismissive as ever. "It's probably just paperwork. We've dealt with worse. We always manage." That was when I pushed open the boardroom door. Every face turned. My father's expression darkened instantly. "Rowena, this is a private board meeting. Whatever meltdown you're having over the house can wait." I walked in, each step calm and deliberate. Actually, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I placed my briefcase on the table, its click echoing across the room. "The CEO of Veritas Capital has a 10 o'clock meeting with you." Jasper frowned, glancing at his watch. "Yes, but she hasn't." "She has." I opened the briefcase and pulled out the legal documents. "She's here. I'm the CEO of Veritas Capital." The silence was deafening. My mother's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. My father's face turned ashen. Jasper looked as though he'd seen a ghost. "That's not possible," he stammered. "You run some boutique consultancy." My father cut in, voice brittle. "She can't be this." "Can't be what?" I asked, tilting my head ever so slightly. "Capable? Strategic? Too much of a disappointment to eclipse your entire legacy." I laid the documents out across the table. "You'll find every page in order. As of this morning, Veritas Capital holds majority ownership of Barton and Company. That includes the controlling board seats. Which means I am now your superior." My father reached for the papers with trembling hands. This has to be a joke." "No," I said quietly. "This is what it looks like when you underestimate the wrong daughter." He opened his mouth to object, but my mother interjected. "We only sold the house because we needed the funds for the company." "Of course," I replied, my voice razor-sharp but calm. "To protect your legacy?" I scanned the room, then gave a short, humorless laugh. Look around, Mom. This isn't your legacy anymore. It's mine. Veritas Capital doesn't just step in to rescue failing companies, we overhaul them. And Barton and Company? You've been bleeding it dry for years. You can't do this, my father said, his voice cracking. We're your parents. I met his eyes squarely. And business is business, remember? I let those words hang, words they'd flung at me my entire life whenever my needs were inconvenient. Across the table, several board members were stifling smirks. They had endured my family's arrogance for far too long, and today they were witnessing its collapse. Effective immediately, I announced, we're initiating internal restructuring. I turned to Jasper. You are being relieved of your position as Chief Operating Officer. His mouth dropped open. Dad, I continued, you're stepping down as CEO. And Mom, I added, turning toward her, your role as head of communications is no longer needed. You're firing us? Jasper choked. Your own family? I remembered every birthday I skipped to take their business calls. Every holiday I canceled to help with staffing. Every time they rolled their eyes at my ideas, dismissing them like a child's daydream. No, I said with precision. I'm giving you the same opportunity you gave me, a chance to earn your place. I opened the personnel folder. Jasper, there's an opening in accounts receivable. Entry level. My mother gasped. Dad, we're looking for door-to-door sales reps for our new regional outreach program. He looked like he might collapse. And Mom, I finished, the front desk is in need of a receptionist. Someone with a kind smile and a strong memory. She clutched her face in disbelief as tears spilled down her cheeks. Or, I continued as I calmly tucked the folder back into my briefcase, you can have your desks cleared by 5 o'clock this evening. The choice is entirely yours. You're so ungrateful, my father began, voice rising. I raised my hand, halting him with quiet authority. Careful what you say. You're addressing your superior now. I gathered the documents and turned toward the door. But just before I exited, I paused and looked back. Oh, and one more thing about the house. Their heads snapped up. The one you sold out from under me? I purchased the development firm that acquired it. The deed will be returned to my name by tomorrow morning. The expressions on their faces were priceless, pure disbelief layered with the bitter taste of justice. After years of being minimized, dismissed, and written off, I had reclaimed everything they had tried to take from me and more. I turned to the boardroom. We resume tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. Be prepared with your departmental updates. Then I looked over my shoulder and fixed my gaze on the people who once called themselves my family. For those of you who still have positions at this company, I said clearly, the rest may collect your belongings from security. And with that I walked out, head high, composure intact, power fully claimed. No longer the invisible daughter. No longer underestimated. My heels echoed sharply against the marble floor, each step a declaration. Behind me their world was unraveling. My mother's stifled sobs, my father's furious shouts, Jasper's stunned silence, they trailed behind like background noise I no longer heard. For the first time in 35 years, their words couldn't touch me. They no longer held any part of me. I had built something they never saw coming, something they didn't believe I was capable of. And now, standing at the summit of my own making, I had finally shown them the truth. I wasn't the daughter they wrote off, I was the reckoning they never prepared for. My phone vibrated. A message from Nico Bauer in Berlin. Glückwunsch, Frau Clark. How did it go? A smile tugged at my lips as I stepped into the executive elevator. Better than expected, I replied. It was time to rebuild Barton and Company my way. As the elevator doors closed, I glanced once more at the brass plaque bearing the company's name. They had always chosen this building, this name, this image, over me. Now they could watch me turn it into something they never could have imagined. Because the most powerful kind of vengeance isn't in confrontation. It's in transformation. I stepped out into the crisp London breeze, the building now mine. A monument to everything they tried to deny me. The following morning, I sat in the leather chair that once belonged to my father. The sun streamed across the desk, catching my reflection in the glass behind it. My office now. I picked up the morning paper and a soft laugh escaped me. Veritas Capital acquires Barton and Company, CEO revealed in stunning boardroom takeover. Unknown CEO. If only they truly knew. If they understood the years of preparation, the endless study, the sleepless nights. The quiet execution behind every move. The anonymity they mocked had been my greatest shield. To them, I'd always been the girl running a modest consultancy from Switzerland. But that's the thing about being underestimated, it's the perfect disguise until the moment you strike. I dialed my broker. Hi, Ivy. I'd like to list a property for sale. Yes, the townhouse on Rehearse Lane. The one the Clark family recently sold. A pause. Oh, don't worry. I own it now. Acquired the holding company last week. I leaned back, the phone still pressed to my ear. Listed at market. No family discounts. Sometimes karma arrives like a scandal. Sometimes it's a lawsuit. And sometimes she walks into your boardroom in designer heels, holding the deed to your past. If you've ever felt overlooked, belittled, or told you'd never make it, you'll understand this feeling. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you. Truly. It means more than I can express because this wasn't just about a company or a house. It was about reclaiming my worth, my identity, my voice. And if you've ever been the one no one believed in, the one who stayed quiet while building something extraordinary, then maybe you saw a piece of yourself in this journey. I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment, not just for me, but for someone else who might need to hear it. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Have you built something remarkable while they only saw failure? I want to know. Let's remind each other that quiet strength is still strength and that you don't need to shout to be powerful. You only need to persist. If my story resonated with you, consider subscribing. Not just to support me, but to stand with everyone who has ever been told they weren't enough. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't owe anyone proof of your potential. You owe it to yourself to become everything they said you couldn't. Work relentlessly. Move with intention. Be patient with your power. Because the most powerful revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming the version of yourself they never saw coming. And when that moment arrives, step into the room like you've owned it all along. Because maybe, just maybe, you already did.